Blue Jays breaking news. Our daily edition starts now with the most important breaking news and latest updates.
Speed up with us on the Toronto Report and follow the statements that are shaking up the baseball backstage.
The war is not over. Toronto just won the biggest pitching battle of the deadline. They landed the best controllable arm on the market. Case closed, right? Wrong. Because even after the ink dried, after the physicals cleared, after José Soriano was already wearing blue and white, teams were still calling, still begging, still trying to rip him away from the Toronto Blue Jays. This is a story of how close it came to slipping away, and why it never actually could. Let's rewind. When the trade deadline dust started settling, one name kept popping up on every front office's wish list. José Soriano. Not Reed Detmers. Not Zach Neto. Soriano, a hard-throwing, cost-control starter from the Los Angeles Angels who wasn't just good. He was quietly one of the most durable arms in baseball. Top 25 ERA among starters with 400-plus innings over the last 3 seasons. That's not hype. That's production. Multiple clubs were circling the Angels in the final days before the deadline. Everybody wanted a piece of that Anaheim rotation. But Toronto moved first. And Toronto moved decisively. 3 prospects. Built around shortstop Arjun and Mala. Done. Soriano was a Blue Jay. This should have ended the conversation. It didn't, because once the deal was announced, teams that lost out on Soriano didn't just accept defeat. They pivoted. They turned their attention directly to Toronto. The Minnesota Twins called. The Chicago Cubs called. Front offices that struck out with the Angels were now trying to buy Soriano secondhand. Straight off Toronto's plate, days after he'd barely thrown a single pitch in a Jays uniform. Think about that for a second. This wasn't a rebuilding club looking to flip an asset. This was a team that had just landed its long-term rotation piece. And other GMs were still trying to pry him loose. That's how valuable Soriano is. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Toronto wasn't actively shopping him. Let's be clear about that. But smart front offices always listen. Always. Even on players you have zero intention of moving. You pick up the phone. That's not disloyalty. That's due diligence. That's how you run a franchise at the highest level. And the team that pushed hardest? Minnesota. The Twins were already deep in talks with Toronto on reliever Jeff Hoffman. But behind the scenes, they floated something much bigger. A Soriano package, built around infielder Kalen Culpepper. Minnesota's number 3 prospect in the entire farm system. This is where the chess match got real. Toronto listened. And then Toronto set a price that basically ended the conversation before it started. The Jays didn't just want Culpepper. They demanded Minnesota's top pitching prospect, Riley Quick, as the second piece. 2 elite, controllable assets. For a starter Toronto had literally just acquired 48 hours earlier. This is Ross Atkins playing chess, while everyone else plays checkers. Minnesota balked. The Twins weren't willing to gut their farm system twice in the same week. For a pitcher, they'd already lost once. Culpepper got called up to majors instead, and he homered in his debut. Soriano made his own Jays debut the very next day, throwing 4 2/3 innings of 1-run baseball against the Phillies. 2 paths, 2 franchises, 1 trade that never happened. But to understand why Minnesota was desperate enough to offer that much, you need to understand the pressure the Twins were under heading into this deadline. A year ago, Minnesota tore it all down. 10 players out the door. Multiple controllable relievers gone. Carlos Correa, gone. It was a fire sale, and the fans noticed. Attendance at Target Field kept sliding. The building got quieter. The pressure built. Team chairman Tom Pollard knew it. He admitted it publicly in July, before this deadline even arrived. This is a build-and-they-will-come situation. Pollard said, the fans are not going to come back based on words. That's not a general manager talking. That's ownership admitting the previous strategy failed. So this year, Minnesota flipped the script. They said they'd be buyers if they were anywhere near the playoff race. And they were true to their word. Early, they landed A.J. Minter. They landed Jeff Hoffman. They grabbed Dean Kramer from Baltimore to stabilize the back of the rotation. Solid moves. Real upgrades. But it wasn't enough. Minnesota wanted the knockout blow. They wanted the headline. They wanted Soriano. and they weren't afraid to dream big to get him. Pollard made that intention crystal clear after the deadline closed. "We had a very clear strategy," he said, "for us to accomplish the things that we want to accomplish and be a consistently competitive team in the playoffs. And going deep, we have to make an investment into this team. We did that in a small way at the trade deadline. You'll see more of it next year." Read between those lines. Minnesota is coming back hungrier, and Toronto just showed the entire league what it's going to cost to compete with them for elite, controllable arms going forward. But let's go back to the source of all this chaos. The Angels. Los Angeles wasn't just fielding calls on Soriano. Minnesota also inquired about Zach Neto, a shortstop with 3 years of team control remaining. The asking price? A package centered around Walker Jenkins, Minnesota's top overall prospect in the entire organization. The Twins said no. Some players simply aren't available, no matter who's calling. So Soriano became the whale everyone was chasing. And Toronto was the only team willing to pay the price the Angels wanted. At the moment it mattered. This is where the genius of the Jays' entire deadline strategy comes into full focus. Everybody talks about buying and selling at the same deadline. It sounds great in a press conference. It rarely actually happens in real life. Toronto pulled it off. They sold. Kevin Gausman, gone and expiring. L turned into future value. Dalton Varsho, gone. Another win now, piece flipped for pieces that fit the timeline Toronto actually wants to build around. And on the buying side, they didn't panic spend on a 2-month rental. They targeted a starter with years of control left on his deal. A workhorse. A building block, not a band-aid. This is a disaster for every team that lost out. This is a masterclass for Toronto's front office. And now Soriano slots in right behind Dylan Cease at the top of the Blue Jays rotation that suddenly looks terrifying for the next several years. Manager John Schneider has already noticed similarities between the two pitchers. "He's a different dude than Dylan," Schneider said. "But I think that there are some parallels there that can hopefully be picked up pretty quick." Translation? Toronto believes they can unlock another level out of Soriano. The same way they helped transform Cease this season. The same way they turned Robbie Ray into a Cy Young winner back in 2021. This organization has a track record of taking talented arms and making them elite. Soriano might be next. Now here's the twist in this entire saga. Toronto and Minnesota didn't walk away from the deadline as enemies. They actually completed a separate deal right at the buzzer. Jeff Hoffman, sent to the Twins for 3 prospects, finalized minutes before the deadline hit. This wasn't a random transaction. This is officially the latest chapter in a growing partnership between these two front offices. Louis Varland came to Toronto back in July of last year. Tommy Nance went the other direction just last month. Twins general manager Jeremy Zoll addressed the pattern directly after the deadline closed. I feel like sometimes it just means that there's better alignment on how that team sees your system as opposed to big mismatches. Zoll said, "But in certain cases, we don't line up and you can never know exactly how each team is going to value all your players. You're just working as hard as you can to assess the market and where those value matches and mismatches are to create alignment to get actionable." I don't know exactly how that has come to be with Toronto the last few years. 2 front offices that understand each other. 2 front offices that will absolutely be doing business again. But make no mistake, when it came to Soriano, Toronto held all the leverage and Toronto knew it. So now it's your turn, Blue Jays Nation. Toronto set a sky-high asking price for Soriano. A package so steep that even a desperate, aggressive Minnesota front office walked away. Was that the correct call? Or did the front office get greedy? Risking a relationship with a division rival team over players they'd already locked up? And bigger picture, would you have pulled the trigger if Minnesota came back with Riley Quick? 2 years of Soriano upside is nice, but is it worth blocking a future ace from ever wearing Twins colors, purely out of spite or out of genuine roster need? Drop your answer in the comments. Tell us if Atkins played this exactly right, or if this front office is starting to believe its own hype, because one thing is certain. This roster isn't finished being built. There are more trades coming, more extensions coming, more bombshells dropping before this offseason is even over. If you want to be the first to know when the next deal breaks, hit subscribe right now. Turn on notifications, because this front office is not slowing down, and neither should you. This is Blue Jays baseball, and the chess match is just getting started.